Which city are you in?
It's a city called Pune, which is about, you can say 3.5 hours from Mumbai.
How's the weather there? Is it hot?
We're getting to winter, Kevin. The hottest period is just behind us, up to October. And then there's a couple of months, up to 4 months of monsoon before that.
Yes.
Then it gets very hot for October. And then November, December, Jan, Feb is the ideal time weather-wise here.
So Logan NAIDU is a stalwart of our profession. He shows how tenacity and the humility can bring lasting success to all of us prepared to see financial services as a calling and a life's career. Tony Gordon, past president, MDRT. And another quote, "Unleash your magic" is probably the most definitive description of the successful entrepreneur that I've ever read. No one can read the book without being optimistic about the future because it defines the unique role of being a success in your chosen field. By Mamohan Abdullah, Malaysia. So I have the privilege and honor of interviewing Logan NAIDU, a 40-year qualifying and a life member of MDRT, also the past country chair of South Africa. And it's really my pleasure to interview him today. My name is Kevin Ye. I'm the current country chair of MDRT South Africa. Join me as I interview 40 South African financial advisors who are also MDRT members as we learn about their life lessons, their insights, and their tips on personal finance. So Logan, it's really a pleasure to have you on this program. How are you today?
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kevin. I must take this opportunity right at the outset to compliment you on a level of activity that I've not seen in many, many years. So well done to you. You're doing an amazing job, actually.
Thank you, Logan. I'd just like to share with you and the audience how I met you is actually through Kuba's plane. I visited him at his office a few years ago, and he actually gave me this amazing book, and I just like to hold up and show to everyone. So it's a book written by Logan, and it's called Unleash Your Magic. It's quite a powerful book about his experience and what he's learned from NDRT. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but I would let him speak about some of the details from the book. But Logan, let's just first start with, where did you grow up and what did you study?
Well, I grew up in a suburb called Greenwood Park. This is in the north of Durban. And all my studying, right up to high school was done in Durban.
And what did you study at university?
Well, to be quite honest, Kevin, when I was growing up, it was a very tight situation financially for my family. So the same thing applied to my brothers. My eldest brother had to leave school early to go and work and earn an income to supplement the family income. My dad was earning, a pretty meager income, basically. My elder brother, one above me, he also did the same. And so when I finished my matric, I went straight into the workforce.
Maybe around that time was still under apartheid?
Oh, very much so. Very, very much so.
And what was your experience of apartheid at that time?
Well, from a very young age, Kevin, I was very actively involved in the anti-apartheid movement. In fact, I was very involved with ratepayer associations, school education committees, and so forth. So when the United Democratic Front was formed, I was chairman of one of the founding affiliates, in fact, you might have heard, that was the mass democratic movement that basically was key and instrumental because the ANC was banned at that time. So the United Democratic Front was the organization that primarily was responsible for, ushering in this period of democracy. So I've had many experiences. I mean, obviously the Group Areas Act was a big deal. I remember going to a beach, the Durban beachfront one day. You couldn't see a policeman anywhere in sight. And it just so happened that there was an African gentleman that went into the water and put up a flag of the African National Congress. I've never seen so many policemen, must have been about 50 policemen from every different direction, zeroed in on him and caught him and dragged him off. And obviously, I don't know what happened to him after that, really. But that was, just one experience. And, I mean, you saw park benches that were marked, whites only and things like that. And you had Indian schools, of course. My very first job, Kevin, was with the Department of Indian Affairs. You had different government departments for each of the racial groups in the country.
Wow.
So we grew up in the thick of apartheid, and seeing the injustices that generally prevailed. For some reason, it got me motivated to want to do something to maybe bring about change, basically.
Yeah, I think it's unthinkable for young South Africans who are not born in that period and never experienced that. It's great that you shared with us, so we knew what kind of atrocity or injustice that took place during that period of time. So, Logan, how did you become a financial advisor?
All right, so just another step in between. I said I worked for the Department of Indian Affairs, and then there was a company called Mobil Oil Refinery. It's now Engen. They still operate, actually. Mobil Oil Refinery only took on white technicians at that time. And then all of a sudden, I see an advertisement in the newspaper for technicians. They looked at mainly Indian and colored technicians.
Okay.
So I said, let me apply. And I applied for the position of technician at Mobil Refinery. And lo and behold, I got the position. So I worked for Mobil 6 years, basically, but it was shift work. 8 to 4, 4 to midnight, midnight to 8 in the morning, and you work 6 days on, 2 days off.
Yeah.
And so I worked for a couple of months, I think, and then realized I've got so much of spare time. I mean, I was bachelor, I was, had enough time, really. So I walked into a life insurance company called African Eagle Life in the central Durban, actually, Grey Street at that time.
Yeah.
And, put me through to a manager. Then I said, I want to sell life insurance. Now, Kevin, it's long before your time. Requirements were virtually non-existent at that time.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So basically, they just didn't really even interview me, but just had a friendly chat, and gave me a rate book and said, right, go and sell insurance now.
Wow, as simple as that.
that was how I got into the industry. Obviously, we used to have meetings on Monday mornings and things like that, but I'm still working full-time at Mobil Refinery, remember?
Yeah.
So they took me on a full-time contract at African Eagle Life, holding down my shift work at Mobil. So it enabled me quite often to make the Monday morning meetings, sometimes coming straight off of midnight to 8 in the morning shift and straight into town to go to a meeting.
Okay. Wow.
It was interesting.
That's the experience.
And eventually the manager, Kevin, I, for some reason, I think, I had a fair amount of contacts, even at Mobil Refinery, particularly. My production was virtually on par with all those doing full-time, as full-time agents, basically. The manager kept kind of trying to convince me to come in full-time. And eventually, this was 1974 when I joined African Eagle Life.
That was the year I was born.
Oh, well, look at that. 6 years later, 1980, I got married, and then realized that working shifts and being married were mutually incompatible. And that's when I left the refinery and joined African Eagle Life full-time at that time.
Yeah, I see. Logan, I'd like to ask you, just for viewers, back in the 1970s, when you're working for a refinery, what was your salary or wage?
I started off with around, I think, 164 Rand a month.
Okay. Right.
Kevin, another very interesting thing, I've got to tell you this. So there were lots of us that started at the same time. There were coloreds, there were, Indians, and there were whites, really. And, just so happened chatting to one of the white guys, and we got to know that his salary was 260 Rand a month.
Okay, so more
and
than
I was 164 a month doing exactly the same job.
Yeah.
Right. And what I did at that time, there were a few really powerful congressmen in the United States, Charles Diggs and Senator Edward Kennedy at that time.
Yeah.
So I fired off a letter to them. I said, there's a United States company practicing racial discrimination when it comes to salaries for people doing exactly the same work.
Yeah.
And I don't know if my letter had anything to do with it, but within 1 month, they equalized our salaries, basically.
That shows that when there's something not right, you need to speak up. And then
Absolutely. When I left there 6 years later, Kevin, when I left there in 1980, I was, to your first question, I got promoted and so forth, and I was earning 600 Rand a month in 1980.
Right. And tell me, at that time, 600 Rand, was it a good pay? Or average?
I think it was a really good pay, Kevin. I even had a savings account and I had a savings balance.
Yeah.
So it was more than adequate for me. And of course, remember, I was earning some income from my insurance, because I was still, doing my insurance at that time, basically. Yeah.
I think for people working nowadays, they just can't imagine having 600 Rand a month. But I think it just illustrates the kind of inflation and how it erodes the purchasing power of money over the years. So you quit your job at refinery in 1980. So you're a full-time life insurance sales agent.
That's right. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So full-time on the life insurance side. And then I, looked at some challenges. I was quite technical. I still am to a large extent, and did all the company courses, in insurance, that the financial planning, et cetera, et cetera. Then I was kind of looking for a challenge, Kevin, and the Institute of Life and Pension Advisors was formed. This again might be before your time. It's called ILPA.
Yeah.
You've heard of them, right? So ILPA had a qualification called FOLPA, Fellow of the Institute of Life and Pension Advisors.
Yeah.
And the very, very first examinations were going to be held in April 1982. So I said, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to take a chance and write these exams. And, people thought I was mad because there wasn't a single person from Southern Life. It was, company had changed the name to Southern Life by then. No. Not even one person, not even a legal advisor had decided to, write the exams. I think they just wanted to see how it transpires. There were no set, no study guides, no manuals, no nothing. They just gave you a recommended list of books that, you could purchase. And of course I did. And, anyway, cut a long story short, I put in some intensive studies there. And lo and behold, I got through all the 4 subjects at the first sitting in April. Brilliant. So April 1982 was the very first time that those examinations were held, Kevin, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
So obviously I was the only one in Southern Life, and they made a big deal of it, and they gave me a special award and all kinds of things, really, basically. So that started off, my studies, in a sense, post-matric studies. And since I'd done so well in a relatively short time in these exams, I decided, let me enroll through the University of South Africa for a Bachelor of Commerce degree. Yeah. Then I enrolled in 1983. I said I'll start off on a small scale, did 2 subjects, and did pretty well, in economics particularly. And I got a bursary to study another subject. And eventually I completed that BCom in 4 years, basically. So that's how I ended up getting my BCom through UNISA.
I see. And your CFP study was much later.
No. Remember, so give you a little history lesson there.
Okay.
FOLPA, or Fellowship of ILPA, was the forerunner to the CFP qualification.
Okay.
So that was converted to the CFP designation.
Right.
So I didn't have to write a separate examination. It was exactly the same, qualification that I got, that was called FOLPA, FILPA, that was then later, converted to the CFP designation, basically.
And did ILPA become a FPI?
Yeah, basically. That's it, effectively. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the technical process there,
Right.
But I know, that's the full part qualification became the CFP qualification, basically.
You have such a long and illustrious career as a financial advisor. So can you just share with us what's your secret as a financial advisor to build a successful business and practice?
Well, Kevin, I think, from the early days, I just felt it was very important to properly analyze the client situation, right? Which was very unusual in those days. There was a little Hewlett-Packard machine. It must have been about this big, right? And it so happened, Kevin, my neighbor, cousin of mine, first cousin actually, was also in insurance. And he had a cousin from the United States that used to visit him, every year or so. And that guy was an expert programmer. So he actually drew up on little magnetic tapes, programs, financial needs analysis program, mortgage analysis programs, etc.
Wow.
I'm going back to the 80s, basically, late 80s.
Okay.
And with this little printing roll, it's about this thin, this roll, the adding machine rolls at that time. I don't know if you remember. So we used to put this magnetic slips into this Hewlett-Packard, right? And do these analyses for these clients. Sure. And it used to actually print out on those adding machine papers, very brief, nothing complicated, but a brief needs analysis. Sure. So we started with needs analysis long before it became fashionable to do so, in fact.
That's like a Microsoft Windows version 1.0.
Oh, precisely.
Software.
Exactly. So we felt that there was a need for that, Kevin. How do you analyze a person's situation?
Yeah. So
that really gave us what my cousin and I he was with another company called Norwich Life at that time.
Yes.
But certainly, clients obviously used to be very impressed. She was, coming with a little machine, actually printing out a little slip that they could see what the current, assets, liabilities, what the life insurance is, what they need. It used to do all those calculations. So I've always felt that it was very important to look at it from the client's perspective. Always, do what's in the interest of the client, what's in the best interest of the client. I kind of made it a philosophy that, that's how I will operate, irrespective of what commission I would get, as long as I'm working in the client's interest. I just felt, and I didn't look at that as a result, but the rewards take care of themselves. There's no question about that. Even in my time, in those days, we had a thing called a 5x5 investment plan. You pay for 5 years, let it go for the next 5 years without premiums, and you get the full value after 10 years.
Okay.
At that time, Kevin, I know some of my colleagues were selling 14-year investment plans, 20-year investment plans. Some might say that's fine, but I just didn't feel that was right. So from that point of view, I tried to always do what was in the best interest of the client. And over the term, there's no question about the fact that it's paid off. My persistency levels have always consistently been really high. That's what's enabled me from the first year I went full time to qualify for MDRT also, basically.
And how did you move from Southern Life to Discovery? What was the time frame and process?
Well, I was with Southern Life for about 23 years, Kevin. Right? So all the way from, as of 1974 till about 1990, almost 24 years, 1998. Or what happened in between? I was obviously on the sales side, actually marketing to clients. And I was very active in, it wasn't called a trade union, Kevin, but effectively we had kind of a trade union within the company.
Okay.
And you had 2 representatives from each province. You might recall, I don't know how long you've been in South Africa, but there were 4 provinces, right?
Yes. I came to South Africa in '89, so it was the end of apartheid. So I knew there were 4 provinces at the time.
Exactly. So we had 2 representatives from each province that were elected by the others, and I was elected from KZN. And nationally, for some reason, they elected me as chairman of this consultants council. And so I was very actively involved in consultant affairs, including, pension. I was a trustee of the pension fund on behalf of consultants. And we took up so many issues on behalf of consultants. And it just so happened that many years, this was 1994, the provincial manager, for whatever reason, I don't think he was retiring, but they kind of wanted him to retire. And the position came up for provincial manager. And obviously, I mean, I'm still a financial advisor. I had no intention of applying, but, you know, the regional manager, the general manager said, you know, you should put in an application. Okay. So cut a long story short, you know, I put in an application. And remember, this is 4 levels above where I am now. There's a production manager, branch manager, regional manager, and then provincial manager. Anyway, so I apply, and lo and behold, I get the position.
Okay.
All right. So then I was what they call zone manager, or running the province of KwaZulu-Natal at that time. Yeah. So went on for about 4 years, and then Southern Life went through some major restructuring. You might know subsequently, you know, Momentum took over, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that's when I left to go independent broking.
I see.
Right. So I kind of was an independent broker, marketing, you know, all the major companies for 10 years, basically.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So 10 years till about 2007, 2008. And that's when Discovery approached me. They wanted a franchise, you know, director, basically.
Right.
So initially, I ran a Discovery franchise, basically,
okay.
A broker franchise.
So a Discovery franchise, as I understand it, because I also have a franchise that look after me. So you basically you provide service to a group of brokers or financial advisors. Is that right?
Exactly right. You know, you have to take on broker consultants and mainly servicing them, you know, new business, you know, generation and things like that. Yeah. That went on for a couple of years, and we did fairly well during that time, but financially it didn't quite work out, you know, after a couple of years. Then I became what we call a business executive with Discovery. Okay. So there have been quite a few you know, transitions in my career. Yeah. And again, I think that went on for a couple of years, and I think I also got to realize, Kevin, my forte was in face-to-face consultations. You know, I mean, that's what I've done most of my life. Yeah. Although when I was at Southern Life as, you know, the provincial manager, 3 of the 4 years we were #1 in the country, you know, in terms of the region as it went up. But so then I went back into direct marketing with Discovery. So that's where I've been basically now, you can say, for the last 6-7 years or so, effectively.
All right, so that's quite amazing. So after being a business executive, do you then become a financial advisor again with Discovery?
Right up till 2016, Kevin.
Okay.
Because that's when I made some major decisions in my life. Yeah. You know, I've always been on the search for something higher. You know, there's got to be something beyond just our mere existence as human beings. You know, there's got to be something fundamentally more, really. So I've been on a kind of what you might call a spiritual search. You know, who am I? You know, what purpose am I serving on this earth? And so from the early days, as far as I can remember, I've been searching, tried out quite a few different things. And eventually a colleague in the insurance industry said, you know, this group is coming down from India, talking about the Bhagavad Gita, which is a scriptural text and known throughout the world. And I said, yeah, let's go for it. You know, so anyway, I go to this lecture at the Durban Exhibition Center. Just about 50 people were there, and I was just fascinated. I mean, it was just, you know, I mean, I was hooked. You know, the way they disseminated this knowledge and the way this lecturer explained, you know, the various verses, etc. I said, this is what I've been searching for all the time. So it was a senior person from an organization called the Vedanta Academy, right? That they used to come every year to do lectures in Durban. So anyway, so this was in August 2001. Very next day, I took my whole family along. And it just so happened that that weekend, the head of the academy, Swami Parthasarthi, was doing a weekend retreat at the Drakensberg, right? So I took my 2 elder daughters with me, and we were there Friday afternoon, whole of Saturday, all of Sunday, half of Sunday, and we got back. Middle of the weekend retreat, both girls, I took my 2 elder girls, as I said, both girls said they want to go and do the course in India.
Mm.
Right. So one had already been enrolled at the University of Cape Town for a business science degree. So this was August. So she was still going to write the final examinations. The eldest one was just finishing off a university degree.
Yeah.
So, she obviously had some other plans for further studies. So they both decided January next year, after the exams, they would go and study at the academy. Anyway, so all of us end up at the academy in Jan 2002, and the girls, ended up doing the 3-year residential course.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, Kevin, this is knowledge about life and living.
Okay.
Right. So if you really look at it, I mean, any little gadget you buy, anything, what does it come with, Kevin? Comes an instruction manual, right, Kevin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything you buy. The most complicated, evolved of all creatures, human beings, have no manual. So this course, is effectively a manual on life and living. So that's the easiest way to explain it, because it goes into the fundamentals of the human's constitution, and it teaches you about your own makeup. It kind of reintroduces you to yourself, basically, so that you will be equipped to deal with any challenge that the world throws at you. Right? So that study appealed to me, and the girls, did the course, and the eldest daughter is still at the academy. I mean, she's studying and propagating the knowledge. The middle one studied for 7 years, and she came back to South Africa and taught it extensively in Durban and Johannesburg. And then my third daughter decided she wanted to do the course, and she studied much later, though, in 2015, graduated in 2018. So the moment the youngest was off my hands, it gave me some time to think, Kevin. I said, all right, what do I want to do with my life? And so from 2015, I planned that this is what I want to do. I always wanted to study at this academy, do the course myself.
Yeah.
So then I decided, all right, my wife and I made the decision, and that we would then relocate to India. So basically sold my house, sold the 2 cars that we had, and relocated to India at the end of March 2016, right? And so I've been here in Pune ever since, enrolled at the academy, did the 3-year residential course in Vedanta philosophy, which was, in hindsight, one of the best decisions I'd ever made in my life, because it truly puts life in perspective. You start to understand, what is this world? Who am I? How do I fit into the world? What is my purpose in life? So all those fundamental questions it deals with and gives you all the answers, basically. So yeah, so that's it. So did the course. I still continued staying on at the academy, and my home is in Pune, which is about an hour, 15 hour, 30 minutes from the academy.
And so that is quite a fundamental change in a person's life, like you move from South Africa to India for something you believe in. Are you still practicing as a financial advisor?
Yep. For that, I obviously must thank Discovery. So Discovery were really, really amazing, actually. So they kind of waived my normal production requirements, because you have a minimum production, and Discovery's production minimums are quite high, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
There was no ways that I was going to make those those figures.
Yeah.
So they gave me an exemption from that. And so fortunately, I've been able to do that. I have a fairly good book, I'd say. And, I go back twice a year, ever since I came to India, twice every year, to go back to visit my clients. So basically all my key clients, most of my clients, I'm visiting them twice a year, Kevin.
Yeah.
I mean, some financial advisors don't see their clients twice a year. So the fact that I'm in India is almost, irrelevant. I'm still able to give them the service they need. And then, of course, you've got your electronic media now. I mean, Zoom and Teams and, WhatsApp and all those kind of things. So I'm able to keep in really regular contact with my clients, basically. And it's kind of worked out pretty well. And I still, when I go to South Africa, somehow or the other, it ends up that I'm doing a reasonable amount of new business. Even from India, there's, some pretty decent cases that we've done. Nowhere near the production levels that I was doing when I was doing it full time in South Africa, but we're still able to do some good figures, really.
And with COVID, has that transitioned your business to be online? Maybe your clients accept kind of a Zoom video calls and to have that kind of a virtual meeting instead of you having to come to South Africa to meet them face to face?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Remember, I went last trip to South Africa was in March last year, Kevin. So the intention was to spend 2 months there, mainly seeing my clients, obviously. And of course, within a week of getting there, COVID struck. This was March last year, remember?
Yeah.
And I had an option to come back to India immediately within 24 hours, because the windows would close, flights would be stopped, etc. But we decided that we'd stay with my daughter in Johannesburg. She was teaching in Johannesburg at that time. Right. So we ended up in Johannesburg and ended up staying there from March all the way till December. And there happened to be just a window in December. We didn't know it would be a window, but we made a decision to travel back to India in the second week of December. And so I've been back to India since then.
Right.
But yeah, as far as your question about clients, yes. So then while I was even there in South Africa, we did have a lot of meetings on Zoom. When I got back to India, mainly Zoom meetings. Unfortunately, I'm nowhere near people like Cobus Klein and so forth, the way they've set up their offices. But, for the kind of business that I do, I'm able to kind of manage fairly well, really.
Okay, no, that's great. Logan, let's turn to MDRT. You have been a long-term MDRT member. How did you get to know about MDRT?
Well, MDRT, I cannot exactly remember, but I'm going back now to the 1970s, late 70s, very early 1980, 81, Kevin. There used to be one or two brokers. I remember there were brokers. One guy particularly was from Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah.
And he used to talk about MDRT. So that's how I first got to know about MDRT. Then I obviously did some research on MDRT. And right at the outset, when I came in full time, my very first goal that I'd set was to qualify for MDRT. Remember, I said I left in 1980?
Yeah.
Mobile Refinery. So 1981 was my full production year.
Yes.
So then I said I want to make 1982 MDRT.
Okay.
And so that was my very, very first goal. Second goal was to make what we call the International Quality Award. LIMRA, Life Insurance Marketing Research Association, awards this award, but over a 2-year period. And then I wanted to make my company's top convention locally, so a national sales convention. Those are my 3 goals initially. And it so happened that, yes, I made MDRT on my 1981 production, qualified in 1982. International Quality Award after the second year, and made my national sales convention. It just showed me right from the outset, Kevin, the importance of setting goals. So that's another fundamental thing that anyone that's starting off in this industry must set goals, or later on I talk about vision and visualization extensively in my book. But yeah, setting goals is vitally important.
So for me, as a newbie in MDRT, can you describe to us what was the meetings like? Did you travel for the annual meeting in the 1980s and 90s? What was it like back then?
Well, at that time, the qualification was a little different, Kevin. You needed 2 consecutive years to become a full member.
Right.
And when I joined at that time, in the early 80s, if you had 6 consecutive years, you became a life member. Now it's 10 years, as you know. So 6 consecutive years for non-Americans, you became a life member. So anyway, so I qualified 6 consecutive years. 1987, I became a life member. And that's when I decided, Kevin, I want to go to this annual meeting. I've heard so much about the annual meetings, and I want to go. And so it was pretty expensive. You can imagine, right? US dollars.
Yes.
So what my wife and I decided, I'm going to go all the way to MDRT. Both of us would take a trip. We'll do a tour on the East Coast, Greyhound, and a Contiki tour on the West Coast, which is what we did for 5 weeks. And then my wife came home. I ended up in Chicago. That's where the first MDRT annual meeting was. For me, my first meeting was
the first meeting was Chicago. Okay.
Mind-boggling. I mean, I describe it as magic. It was That's where the title of my book comes, Unleash Your Magic. There's no other word to describe it. It's actually impossible to describe the atmosphere, the energy, the content of an MDRT annual meeting, Kevin. So throughout the book, I urge and implore readers, to not only qualify for MDRT, but attend an MDRT annual meeting. It will change your life. So the very first meeting, I mean, some of the speakers we were exposed to was just amazing, actually, absolutely amazing. It's another level altogether. I mean, one speaker, a guy called Lewis Tice, half the Fortune 500 companies were clients of his. So he's the one that talked, can you imagine, talk about visualization.
Yeah.
And man, I listened intently, and, his credentials were so powerful that I said, whatever he says, I'm going to follow. Anyway, so the whole concept of visualization came from him, in fact, basically.
Yes.
Came back, set the goal to qualify for Southern Life's top 25, which I never imagined I'd ever qualify for. But Lou Tai said, no, you can achieve anything you want, provided you believe you can do it and you take the necessary action. Okay. Came back, set the goal, and I, qualified for top 25 many, many years thereafter. So the MDRT annual meetings were just magnificent, really.
Sure.
And also, Kevin, from the very first meeting, I decided I'm going to be involved with the PGA, Program General Arrangements, as a volunteer. So right from the outset, I served in so many different capacities, and it was more beneficial to me, I think, than to MDRT, because it's amazing how you benefit by serving effectively.
Maybe just give us an overview of your involvement over the years with MDRT.
All right. So as I said, served on PGA, then they got me to serve on committees, a number of different committees, basically, and eventually MCC as a local chairman, then area chair, country chair. I can't remember, it was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And served as country chair for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Then they were looking for a zone chair. So then they, appointed me to serve as zone chair for Middle East and Africa.
Yeah.
And while I was serving as zone chair for Middle East and Africa, a vacancy came up for divisional vice president.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even finished my 2-year zone chair.
Okay.
And that's when they, appointed me as divisional vice president for Membership Communications Committee. So, they had 2 divisional vice presidents at that time. So I was responsible, you can say, for half of MDRT members throughout the world. And we had another DVP for the other half. So that was, I'd say the highest position. And of course, you serve on MDRT's Management Council. Then I was chair of one of the foundation's task force also in MDRT Foundation.
Yeah.
And so, from my earliest days, I just felt the need to contribute whatever I could to help the fellow members. I mean, and as I said, it's such a fulfilling task to be involved with MDRT and to help your fellow members from throughout the world, basically. Even as a greeter, once I was just an official greeter, Kevin.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say just an official greeter. I think that's a very critical task. Formally greeting people, welcoming them, smiling at them was amazing. I mean, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Really. First-time orientation, they used to have a special round table for first-time attendees, Kevin.
Yes.
So each table used to have one person to, one experienced MDRT member to facilitate discussions of sales ideas with these first-time orientation, attendees, basically.
Yeah.
So I served as table host and a whole range of other things. So it's been a thoroughly fulfilling stint over so many decades, basically.
And when were you the country chair for South Africa?
Oh boy, now you're getting me there, Kevin. Country chair, probably if I was divisional vice president in 2015.
Okay.
It's probably going back to the 2007, 2008 roundabout there, I think.
Okay.
Roundabout 2007, 2008, 9, 10 roundabout there. Yeah.
And when did you attend the last annual meeting or the most recent meeting you attended?
Well, the most recent was the virtual top of the table, right? A few weeks ago.
I see. Okay. Right. So you were also
right there.
Absolutely.
So, but the last annual meeting was 20, I mean, live meeting was 2015. That's,
Right.
remember, that's the 2016 I came to India, right? You remember I mentioned 2016.
Yeah.
So once I was here, my studies here in, advanced philosophy were full-time, basically. So I couldn't obviously go to MDRT. And yeah, so virtual meeting 2020, and of course this year's top of the table, virtually also, basically.
So would you say that over the years, how MDRT has evolved? Would you say that right now with a virtual meeting, is that how is this virtual meeting experience different from the kind of an in-person meeting?
Yeah, okay, it's a big difference. I mean, obviously, it's the best that they can do, under the circumstances, COVID-19, etc. But nothing can substitute for being at an MDRT annual meeting, Kevin. I mean, virtual, yes, you can still learn a lot, you can pick up a lot, but it's incomparable. You cannot compare it with actually being together with your colleagues from every corner of the world, listening to speakers, participating, in discussions, and it's just a different atmosphere altogether, basically. So, I mean, they will get back to it next year, no question about it. So once again, I would urge, anyone that's not been to MDRT to attend. I mean, I've been to about 15, 16 MDRT annual meetings over the years, in fact.
Sure, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Logan, what does MDRT mean to you?
Well, I tell you, Kevin, right from the earliest days, I've realized that, MDRTs, if you look at just their ethics and their constitution and how do they look at the human personality, especially MDRT. I mean, you often get high flyers, people that are at the top of the profession, earning crazy amounts of money. But often that's the only focus. Just money. Way back in 1962, Mortimer Adler, right, came up with what they call the whole person concept, right? It was amazing how they formulated it very specifically, looked at many different areas of your life, covering all the areas: physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, family, business, health, all of that, really. Codified it and asked you a number of questions under each one so you could see where you stood on that. Right. And so MDRT was very cognizant of this whole person concept. In other words, having a balance in life. And that was a huge attraction to me. I mean, right from the word go, I said, this is what they're aiming to instill into the members. This organization is amazing, really. So they used to have a number of speakers talking about how you could have a balance in life, etc. Productivity ideas, second to none. You're listening directly. I mean, for instance, in my very first meeting, met two industry legends, the late, great Ben Feldman, right? I mean, he was regarded as the greatest writer in the insurance industry in America, basically. And then, of course, an Iranian, Mehdi Fakhrizadeh, that went to United States, couldn't speak a word of English, ended up becoming one of the top financial advisors in the United States. Wow. So met these two guys, had my pictures taken with them, and it was a fascinating experience, really. In fact, so people like Ben Feldman, Kevin, sharing with you word for word how he interacts with clients, what he does to convince clients, that they need to do business. Just going through the actual process. I've never heard of any industry where people are sharing unselfishly. Yes. All their what so-called secrets to enable you to lift yourself up and get to their level. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. I've not known of any other organization that does that, really. But that's what MDRT does.
Logan, if you think back through your career, what's the one client story that has stuck with you over the years that you'd like to share with us?
Well, just one I can tell you. I mean, this one, I wasn't even full-time yet, Kevin. I mean, I was full-time contract, but I was kind of doing it part-time. Remember, I said I was Mobile Refinery and doing it part-time. One of my colleagues at Mobile, he was an instrument technician. So I signed him up. Fortunately, I had a pretty good source of business there, right? So, signed him up for a life insurance policy. And the poor guy was driving from one of the provinces one day, and on his way down to Durban, he'd met a fatal accident and passed away.
Yeah.
So this was after just a couple of years of the policy being enforced. And, delivering that check, it wasn't a big amount. It was about 40,000 Rand, but I'm going back to the 1970s now. That was a lot of money at that time, delivering that to his mother. And that stood out for me because it told us what this industry does, right?
Yeah.
Even though you can never bring back the personality, but, the compensation, because he was like, one of the important breadwinners in his family. And I think that income, that capital, and part of it we used to give the mother an income, at least allowed her to continue living in dignity, basically.
That's an amazing story.
Absolutely.
Logan, if there's one personal finance or financial planning advice you would like to give to the viewers out there, we're talking about the general public, what is it?
Well, the one thing is, number one, live within your means. The very definition of richness and poorness has got nothing, Kevin, nothing to do with the quantum. You could be a billionaire, you could be a multimillionaire. If your desires exceed your assets, in other words, you want things more than what you can purchase, you are poor. You could be a billionaire. But if your desires are contained within your assets, then you're a rich person. So in other words, keep your expenses well within your income, and you'll go a long way, really.
Yeah, that's very important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Logan, before I let you go, 3 quick fire questions.
Okay.
The first one is, are you a gardener, a sports person, or you're outdoor person?
Wow. I'd say I like sports. I play soccer up to today, Kevin. So soccer and table tennis are my 2 favorite sports.
Maybe I can play a game of table tennis with you.
Well, when I come to South Africa, we definitely must. I probably won't have a chance against you, but I'm willing to try.
No, I'm very rusty. So
okay.
We'll have good fun.
Absolutely.
Next question is, what's your favorite drink?
Favorite drink? Wow, that's an amazing question. I'd say like a pineapple juice. What's
something new happening in your life right now?
Right now, Kevin, you spoke right at the outset about my book, and I've been busy for the last couple of months. I've been coming up with the 3rd edition of the book.
Okay.
Completely, the front cover will completely change. You won't even see my picture there. We're getting it done professionally. I've also looked back, reflected over the last 5 years of my studies at the academy and so forth, and my move to India. So I've tried to incorporate a lot of the lessons into the book. So, hopefully it could be beneficial to anybody that, reads it effectively. So that's what's been fairly new, where I've almost ready to go to publishers now. We're just getting the cover redesigned. In fact, it's one of Cobus's, the guy that did Cobus's books. Cobus referred me to him. So he's helping me with a new cover for my book, in fact. Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of like the book, would it be available in bookstores and online?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be available on Amazon.com, Amazon India, on Kindle. We'll try and make it available to certain outlets within South Africa also, without question.
All right. Logan, thanks so much for your time and to share your insight, your experience. And I think that we'll all be learning a lot from what you have shared. And I'd like to wish you well. Until next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much, Kevin, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Thumbs up if you like this episode and share it with your friends.